It's nice to be back on Bridge to the Tango videos. And tonight I want to share with you a whole range of movements that I've collected over the years dancing tango. And many of them could be called embellishments, and other things fall into a range of technical or mechanical or stylistic options. For example, over the years, I have amassed a collection of backward boleos of all different shapes and sizes, and I firmly believe that every woman should have a collection of backward boleos, of at least a dozen backward boleos. And tonight I'm going to share 6 or 7 backward boleos because they're the ones that are the clearest in my mind and perhaps clearest for sharing. And then I'm going to say a word or two about front boleos. And so you can see already that those things are sort of embellishment category and sort of have to do with what you're being led. And then we're going to talk about stepping over someone's foot and all the commentary that you can add there. This boleo is very, very tiny, but very powerful and satisfying. And it is the perfect boleo to dance in the most crowded tango salons. What you do is you keep your foot on the floor. And now I'm going to show you how to dance this boleo. It looks like this. My foot stays on the floor. It doesn't swing out behind me anywhere into this space, so it's not going to hit another couple. In fact, the entire boleo is contained under my body and therefore within the enclosure of the dance couple. So you can't hit somebody else, really. And also, I'm not even aiming my dagger-like heels at the world. I'm aiming them to the floor. So it's doubly safe. But it's powerful because my leg, my entire leg, swings forward with energy and ricochets off of my stable axis, which is embodied through my standing leg and up through my torso. And so I can play with sending my free leg in a swinging motion, in a circular swinging motion around that axis, and have the pleasure of feeling it bounce out of its furthest point and return to its resting place with my feet together. And I've seen this boleo taught best by a dear friend and colleague of mine from Nijmegen in the Netherlands. And the brilliant thing that he suggested was to first, when you practice this boleo, practice drawing a circle. So I'm going to show you now. You draw a circle, and then you swing your leg around and forward. You draw a circle and swing your leg as the tail of the circle. So you have this circular motion that you feel from your hip, and then you let your hip swing around at the tail end of that circle into the boleo. And then once you've done that a few times, you simply imagine that you're drawing the circle. You imagine it in your mind. You remember what it felt like. Imagine the circle and throw the boleo. Imagine the circle and throw the boleo. And you have this lovely boleo. I'd like to show you from the back, so I'm going to turn around. First, I'm going to draw the circle, throw the boleo. My hip will turn a little bit, and my leg, I'm just going to pause in the moment of the boleo to show you that each of my legs has turned out about 45 degrees for a total of 90 degrees. It's not a lot of turnout. You can probably do this comfortably. It's not that I find the position here. I'm just showing you 90 degrees with my heels together. But actually, in the moment of the boleo, that turnout arrives when my toes are close together. My standing leg is a little bent, and that permits my swinging leg to go forward this far, all the way to be even with my other toes. And so you get this kind of quirky shape where my toes are together and my heels are apart. I try to make it look pretty and stylish by making sure that the big toe is on the floor, not just the little toes. So I have to do some work shaping my ankle. And that's true every time you cross the midline of your body. Because if your foot is kind of well aligned and straight out from your ankle at this part of your body, I mean on this side of your body, as you cross the midline, it's going to arrive kind of on a diagonal so that your little toe is on the floor and not your big toe. And it looks nice if you can put your big toe down on the floor, which involves some of these ankle muscles on the outside of your ankle, and sometimes involves some adjustment in your hips. So you want to keep your hips kind of flexible and mobile so that they can adjust to make your feet look cute. And then when you put your foot behind you on the midline, the same issue crops up. You're trying to make a pretty line with good alignment in your ankle, but as your foot crosses the midline, again you arrive at this diagonal, which I must admit can look cute in certain circumstances, but right now you want to get your big toe down, so you've got to roll your ankle and shape the ankle so that it looks nice in all this whole vicinity that you're playing with in the back boleo. My dear old friend Daniel Trenner is here to help me demonstrate these boleos, and I've asked him to just lead me in a few boleos, dancing in a close embrace as if we were in a crowded milonga, and I'm going to dance the tiny boleo. That's great, Danny. Thank you. I want to mention that I have to make an effort to keep my heel down, to think of stretching my free leg, the back of my free leg. And I feel that when I'm in a crowded milonga, some of that effort, the energy for that effort comes from my awareness that I'm surrounded by other nice people that I don't want to kick. That gives me a general awareness of how much space I'm taking up and where my heels of my shoes are pointing. And I want to point them down to the floor. This next boleo is also a low boleo. It's on the floor, but it takes up a bit more space than the tiny boleo. And so you would only dance it when you know you have that space, or when the leader suggests or indicates a low boleo with some low energy, like some downward relaxing in the embrace, or slight downward motion of the entire couple. And I'm going to show it to you now, giving you my back, so you can see the range of motion. This is the boleo. And what I want to emphasize is this section of the range of motion here, because a lot of times if you just think about a back boleo being on the floor, you might just dance this part of it, which is quite pretty, but it's interesting to do this part of it also, the part where your legs are turned in. So here, when I dance this part of the boleo, my legs are turned out, and now they're kind of parallel, and now they're turned in. You see, I'm using the whole range of the mobility in my hip joints to dance this boleo, to draw a big arc on the floor, practically a half circle behind me on the floor. So I'm using the mobility in my hip joints. I'm letting my hips swing, and then my foot will swing even farther, of course. And then when I get to this side, just to kind of repeat it in a different way, I'm in a turned-in position, almost as if I were standing in this awkward pigeon-toed position or dancing the Charleston or something. So I'm using that turned-in part to expand the range of motion so that I could, for example, fill out a slow moment in the music. If the leader gives me a long moment to dance a boleo on the floor, I'm not done with it in a flash, but I have this whole range to linger through and explore. And it's interesting to practice these back boleos as a little variation between back ochos. So even if you're at a wall or a bar the way I am, you could dance a couple of back ochos like this, and then swing a couple of these boleos without really an ending swinging out of them, but then just go into another back ocho. So you have a kind of relaxed moment of swinging, and then the next back ocho, and you try both sides, of course. And the other thing I want to mention is that I'm practicing these without pivoting right now. My standing leg is firm, and I think that's an interesting way to practice, and you might be dancing it this way. But if your leader pivots you or indicates that you should pivot, then your trajectory will be even larger. You'll go even farther because you'll add the gesturing leg that's swinging around in an arc on top of a pivot, and the whole thing gets really tremendous and takes up a lot of time, which is nice if you're doing a nice big slow boleo with slow music. Danny, will you please lead me in some back ochos and back boleos with a kind of a rhythm to it, like boom, 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 and the boleo, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, like that. Boom, 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 boom. Perfect. There's a very interesting boleo that I learned by dancing with a friend of mine in Montreal, who I used to dance with a lot years ago, and it teaches you something very interesting about back boleos. It teaches you to wait, because it's a kind of a delayed gesture. It was like this. We'd be in a back ocho position, we'd be dancing back ochos, and then he'd like let me turn to get ready for the next ocho, but he'd stop me, and I would automatically tuck my foot behind my other foot in order to look cute while I'm waiting. And then he would suddenly flip me around, and there's my boleo. So it was like a boleo with a pause, like this. And you could dance it without tucking your foot behind. If the pause is not that long, you might just get to here and then dance your boleo right away. I'm going to show that again. What I did was collected my feet together, and then assuming the leader now is pivoting me in the other direction, I'm drawing my circle of my boleo as I turn to the front. And that's the interesting thing, is to feel your leg reach its most dramatic moment as you're turning out of the backward position. So in other words, here I'm being led to change directions from a backward ocho to a forward ocho. And in that change of direction, I'm dressing up the change of direction with a boleo. But I'm doing it at the last moment. And the leader could ask for that shape intentionally. And I know one who does, now that I think about it. And, or he could just sort of suggest that shape to you with his timing, which might be sort of accidental or just sort of strike you that way. Because it doesn't have to have a huge delay. It's like the energy for the boleo could come as you are turned to the front. That could be the moment of highest energy. I keep dancing it on one side. I feel like I should show you the other side as well. So here's my pivot. I might tuck behind. And then if I dance this gesture, let's just look at what this is. If I tuck behind, my knee, my right knee has gotten caught behind my left knee, and I'm going to keep it there because that's an excellent landmark or place to park my knee as I swing my right foot up in a circle around me. And I'm again using some of this turn out position and turn in position to add some roundness to that gesture. So it's not just up and down, it's like around in the air, bring my feet together, and then I can walk forward into the front ocho. For this next boleo, I recommend that you take off your high-heeled shoes, as I have done, because you're going to swing your leg through a vast arc behind yourself, and at the same time, you're going to swing your arms in a movement that a lot of my students find silly, but I feel it's important and a lot of fun. And here's the exercise. You stand with your feet apart, swing your leg behind you, and your arms go in the opposite direction. Okay, now this is a twist through your torso that you're creating by swinging your leg behind you and swinging your arms in the other direction. Your arms bring your shoulders, which start to move your rib cage. And then you can practice a very big, loose, relaxed, swingy boleo. And you can just come back to a big stance like this. Just kind of like swing into it and fall out of it. Because one part of the alchemy of boleos is relaxing. So it's nice if you can relax your feet on the floor, wear relaxed clothing, and just do a kind of relaxed motion, like just swinging your arm like this, rather than placing it into a position. You're swinging your leg, swinging your arms. Why would you swing your arms? Well, because you're going to swing your leg so hard, meaning with so much relaxed momentum, that if you didn't do anything else, your leg would just turn you around like that. It would just take over, and you need something in your upper body going the opposite direction so that you have one circle going in this moment clockwise and another circle going counterclockwise, which is my arms. So my legs go clockwise, my arms go counterclockwise, and I end up even so that I can stop in a balanced position. I'm going to give you my back. So in case you're doing this while you watch it, you can see now I'm going to swing this leg, my left leg, around. Now it's going, let's see, if I'm looking down at myself, my leg's going counterclockwise, my arms are going clockwise. And what I'm doing is letting my leg go through the air without collecting, certainly without pivoting. I'm not pivoting. So I want this leg just stable, and this leg is going backward more than anything. And I'm making sure that my foot doesn't go very high. It's actually about knee height, because I want my foot, actually I want my whole lower leg to represent a kind of a, well, is rudder the right term? I don't know, but it's like a big mechanical arm that, like, if I kicked upward, it would just be shorter. It would be like a shorter little circle, like a shorter tail that I'm wagging. I want a long tail that's heavy with the momentum of its length being swung around in a circle. And so the positioning is, I try to train myself, you know, you could use a mirror or something, make sure that your foot is at knee height, and then you end up also tucking your knee behind the other knee. So my swinging leg tucks behind my standing leg, my standing knee. I'll show you from the side. Of course, my standing leg is slightly bent, making a pocket behind the knee, and then I can just aim for that as my stopping point in the swing of my leg. So I swing through the air and I stop right as my knees connect one behind the other. So again, my leg goes backward and up, around, arcing behind me. And to do that, of course, my lower back is going to have to be flexible. My hips are going to change their orientation, because as my thigh goes backward, I can't maintain a perfect sort of well-aligned and healthy structural alignment. I need to let my hips change their alignment a little bit, and then I can recover, perhaps I can recover after the boleo, depending on what posture I'm dancing in general. But definitely for the boleo, my hips are going to have to be a bit loose in a couple of directions. I'm letting my tailbone arch a little bit, my lower back rather, and turning my hips, and I might also let one hip go down a little bit. In fact, that's what happens when I tuck one knee behind the other. If my knees are next to each other, see, my hips can be at the same level. My hip bones are level now. But if I cross my knee behind the other knee, my left hip bone is much lower than my right hip bone now. So I'm letting my hips be kind of like this. So my pelvis is really loose in three directions. And well, that's what not only allows my leg to relax in the boleo, which is a coveted goal by many tango students, but it's also actually forcing my leg to relax, because when my leg is behind my other knee, I can't really control it as well as when it's just next to my, and I don't want to control it. So my advice to a lot of students who've come to me in private lessons who wanted to do better back boleos, my main advice is to dance big, slow boleos to get the feeling of them. So to take your time, to let your hips turn as much as they feel like turning, and to tuck one knee behind the other. Those are the main three things I find myself saying until we get the feeling of a nice, satisfying, fat, juicy boleo. And then you can go make the small ones and the special shapes that I'm showing you. But I think that this boleo is a kind of fundamental one for getting the feeling of swing, because it's big enough that you get this satisfying sense of weight. And I want to talk about the arms a little bit more. What I'm doing with my arms is I'm balancing the swing, and then I can experiment with doing more energy in my arms than I do in my legs. So I'm putting more energy into my arms, and that can lead me out of the boleo. So I'm going to go shaping the exercise a little bit, adding another detail, which is ending with a forward ocho. So I can use the momentum of my upper body to pull myself out of the boleo, like this. And it's kind of a funny ending. I end like a zombie, walking with my arms out, but that's how it goes. That's what I've come up with. So you have this nice torque through your body, and now I'm just sort of pretending because I'm slowing everything down, but my arms would win, in fact, and they would pull me out of the boleo so that I don't get this nasty, awkward moment where I'm in the boleo stuck and then I have to climb out with my knee, because I want you to practice coming out of the boleo beautifully. And that means not going through this position where your foot is still up and your knee is forward. That's a common trouble. So I advise you to make sure that you've dropped your foot to the floor before your knee sneaks even or ahead of the other knee. And you can pay attention to that slowly, as I'm doing now, like talking about it slowly. My foot is on the floor, so now I'm permitted to move my knee ahead of the other knee. Or, as I'm demonstrating, you can just let your arms win and feel how that gives your body the momentum, the energy to turn to the front. And that way you don't need to use your free leg to climb yourself into a forward ocho, because I think that's what most people are doing. They feel kind of stuck back here, and they use the free leg to bring themselves around. It just doesn't look that good. Plus, you bump into your partner if you have a partner. Another thing that I'm doing with these arms as they swing around is I'm representing where my leader might be. I'm dancing really a contraboleo, or contraboleo in English. So contra, of course, means against, and boleos can be led by the leader going against the motion of the follower's boleo. In other words, I'm dancing my boleo this way. The leader could be stepping around me this way, in which case my arms would indeed be, in a dance embrace, here. They'd be twisting in this direction around me. So it's not that crazy an exercise. And it lets you practice contraboleos without a partner, comfortably enough, that you can dance them without pushing on your partner, because you've done them by yourself. It is acceptable in a social dance to have a little bit of pressure during a boleo between one side of your embrace and your partner. So in other words, in this boleo, if I have a partner here, I might end up pushing on this side. What I'm saying is that's all right, but it's so nice when you don't need to push at all, and when you can gather all of the forces in your body and make such a perfect, well, perfect is the wrong word, but such a graceful swing that you don't need to push, because your twist of your upper body is already taking you out of the boleo, is marking the edge of the boleo, the rebound, and taking you out of the boleo. As we develop this exercise into a dance, it's interesting to consider the exact path of my foot as I come out of the boleo. So I'm going to dance this boleo, and then I come out on the floor, not necessarily closing my feet. There is, I'm going to show you this way, there's a few inches between my free foot and my standing foot, and in fact I'm shaping my free ankle to look cute. Like this, I'm keeping my big toe on the floor, or the ball of the inside edge of the ball on the floor, and my little toe is up in the air, and that's how I'm drawing on the floor. What am I drawing? It's a curve that becomes a straight line. So here's my boleo, then I come down to the floor in a curve which has to dissolve into a line, which is my ocho. I mean, I guess the ocho could be another curve going in another direction, so that the whole result might be a kind of an S shape that you're drawing on the floor. That's very pretty. But the shape of the ocho is not quite the focus here. So just looking at the exit from the boleo, there's a curve that dissolves into whatever sort of ocho you're dancing. And you want to make that very pretty and intentional. Even when it's fast, it doesn't have to be a lot of pressure into the floor, but it has to be that from a pretty pointed foot in the air, as you approach the floor, your foot kind of gets its landing gear out, so that you start to flex your ankle a little bit and hit the floor in a nice way, prepared to draw with your ankle looking pretty. And that's also an interesting thing to consider when you go from back ochos, because until now we've done it from a side step position, as if you were dancing a side step, and then a boleo, and then a forward ocho. In the other direction, a side step, a boleo, and a forward ocho. But of course, boleos often come from backward ochos, so you're dancing backward ochos, and then to get a similar feeling in the body, you would draw a kind of a circle on the floor, which sets up this very round feeling that you've been practicing. And so in fact, your feet might not be completely together as you swing into this ocho. It's a kind of relaxed, as you swing into this boleo, it's a kind of relaxed boleo. This next boleo reminds me of an impatient cat whisking her tail from side to side, although it doesn't really go from side to side. So it's not exactly what a cat does, but it just reminds me of the attitude of a cat. And it's something like this. It's a loop. This one is very popular. It's very glamorous looking, I think, although probably in these shoes it doesn't look that glamorous. But it's stuff that you've seen already. I'm using the whole range of motion turned out to turned in. And it's worth practicing carefully and slowly to round out the edges. So I'm trying to make a shape kind of like this, I guess, like round at the top. And of course it comes down to the floor with a kind of point at the bottom, because I'm collecting close to my standing foot. So the trouble that a lot of dancers get into is they go very high here, and then they kind of go through a straight place that is not round enough as they hit the floor. And it's interesting to find this area, see what your mobility is, your comfort and your flexibility, and see if you can really make this part of the loop rounder, because it's just very gorgeous looking, I think, especially when you add a pivot. If the leader's leading a pivot and then you're adding this round gesture on top of it, it's quite a dazzling kind of shape. And along with the range of motion that we talked about, you'll also see the landing gear come out as I come close to the floor. I turn my foot and I try to make my ankles still look pretty. My little baby toe is up and I'm drawing on the floor consciously before I step forward. Now I'm going to imagine several different leaders in my mind. I'm going to imagine a leader who just leads kind of a general back boleo, and I could shape it with this cat-like loop. But next, I'm going to imagine that this leader leads me a little bit late. He's starting to lead what feels like it's going to be a back ocho, and so I extend my leg. I start to extend my leg for the back ocho, but then it turns out, to my surprise, it's not a back ocho, it's a boleo. And then I shape it from that start, that prelude. So I've stretched my leg again to the back. I've turned my hip, and I'm reaching a straight leg back as if I'm going to take an ocho, but instead, I get turned to the front. So I'm like, oh, it's a boleo. And that shape of my surprise is a loop, like that. Now I'm going to imagine a different leader who leads me early, who says already maybe from the middle of my side step that it's going to be a boleo. Then I'll get a different shape to my boleo, maybe like the previous one that we were working on, where my leg flung itself out and behind me and just joined at the knee at the apex of the boleo. So it's a totally different result. So now I'm using my arsenal of boleos to match the different leads of different people. Again, I'm imagining a late boleo, a late lead, and an early lead. Each one comes from a side step and goes into what might be a back ocho, and then it turns out it's not a back ocho, it's a boleo into a forward ocho. So again, with the late leader, I'm already here when the boleo strikes. And with the early leader, I'm just here. Bang, it's a boleo. And so I get a different shape. In the 90s, we were messing around with these things called linear boleos or inline boleos. And we got a boleo that would just travel from a backward walking step into a boleo straight back and forward again. It didn't rotate at all. And it was still called a boleo. Well, it still is called a boleo because it has this backward to front change of direction, and it has a rebound. So like you swing your leg, it rebounds after it hits the climactic stretch, and then you go forward. And now this boleo is being used with a pivot, with a rotation, but you finish the pivot first, and then you throw the boleo. So it's something like this. You're dancing maybe backward ochos. You do the pivot of the back ocho, throw the boleo, and then you do your forward ocho. So it looks like it belongs in the category of round boleos, like all the ones we've been doing. But it's actually, if you look at the gesture, it's pretty straight. I'm not turning out or throwing my leg in a circle or a loop. I'm just pivoting all the way, going straight up into the linear boleo shape. My body is twisted toward my partner, in this case, my imaginary partner, but the shape of the boleo is such that I just pinpoint one place in space and just hit that place. And in a way, it's very safe because I'm not flinging my leg around here where I'm going to hit 10 different people. If I hit anyone, it's only one person. But actually, not only is it pinpointed on that one bullseye, but that bullseye is likely to be right under my own arm. So it's not dangerous because I'm standing here. This is my cylinder. This is my space. If I do it on the other side, if I do the other foot, it's a little bit more dangerous because in the follower's embrace, I'm not symmetrical. I'm kind of like this. So my arm isn't sticking out over here the same way, but it's still pretty safe. And I wanted to mention that as I do these bigger boleos, I'm imagining myself dancing in open embrace. When I demonstrate with Danny, we're dancing open embrace because now I would dance these bigger boleos when I can see, when I'm with my eyes looking around, taking responsibility for the violent shape that I'm making in the middle of the dance floor. So here I would probably look out of the corner of my eye and see that there's nobody standing there, and definitely if I'm dancing this side. So it's interesting to practice, even when you're not on the dance floor, turning your head And just seeing your foot as it goes there also helps you twist. This last boleo is one that I actually invented. It's an embellished boleo. It's like a boleo that's led that then I embellish with another boleo. Can you imagine? Well, you're about to see it. Okay, it's something like this. I'll do it over here. I'll step forward and do it. It's like this. Isn't that wicked? It's a two-horned boleo because it goes up here and then again over here. And the situation is that the leader has led me in one boleo, a backward boleo. He's expecting something like this or something round like this, but he leaves me time. Not because he's going to encourage me to do something extra, but just by accident he leaves me time because either it's a slow song or he just has a gentle lead or something. Anyway, I slip in this second horn of the boleo. I let my foot go down a ways, and as it's going down, I'm kind of perceiving that I have more time, and so I send it up again. And that can really be useful if you have a lot of time and the leader hasn't suggested anything new, and it can be really beautiful if there's a kind of a lingering note that you're expressing. So with the other foot, and then I'll show you from behind, I'll give you my back. Let's say here's a backward ocho, and then the boleo, and the second half. Oh, I kind of fell. But let me just do it again. It's one here, and then I'm going to come down, not all the way to the floor, but just kind of dip. And the coming down part, how far you come down depends on how much time you have, how the music is going, and so on. But you can really add like another little ping to your musical expression. It could be a little ping, or it could be, again, a sustained note that you're expressing. Usually the leader notices, but he's not thrown off. He's just like, woo, wow, you did something beautiful there, and extra, and fancy, and festive. The general situation with boleos is that some leaders lead very specific shapes of boleos, specific shapes that they want, or just specific timing, specific amount of energy, which causes a certain shape to be graceful or not to work. And then other leaders, maybe the majority, lead just sort of a general, I want you to dance a boleo now, and then you can add some energy, you can shape it within certain parameters. So I've mentioned that specifically in certain specific boleos, like the leader leads something low, or puts more energy into the exiting motion, or various things like that. But I just wanted to say that sometimes when you're following, you'll feel very specific demand from the leader, like something very fast. If it's very fast, I might not even tuck one knee behind the other. I'll just have my knees next to each other because that makes a shorter boleo. I might even flex my foot. Like for a very fast boleo, it'll be this shape with my foot flexed and my knees together, so it's like a shorter tail that I'm wagging. And then for a slower boleo, I do my more extended position. So again, you have to use your cleverness and your innate grace to put together all of the factors, the boleos that suit your body, your favorite boleos, what you hear in the music, and what the leader is signaling you. If you feel a lot of energy from the leader, you should do a big boleo. But if you feel only a small amount of energy from the leader, you can do a small one. Or if you know you have space and you're not going to hurt anyone, then you can add some energy and do your own flowering. Front boleos. The general idea with front boleos is that you're going forward and you're interrupted. So you have some motion forward, like a forward ocho, for example, and then you're interrupted and you're turned into a backward motion. So when you're interrupted, you can add a gesture like this, something like this, which is a front boleo. And that gesture has variations, of course. And I'm going to show you two shapes in which you're trying to keep your thighs together. So I'm going to show you straight on so you can see. In one shape, it's something like this. My hips are even. And it's kind of like I'm sitting in a chair and crossing my legs. In the other shape, my hips are not even. And it's more like this. My hips are on a slant, see? And I'm kicking my hip in a way. I'm reaching my foot up and my hip is sticking out, so I end up kind of kicking myself in the hip a little bit. Not hard. But it's just, that's where the forces collide. And these are both interesting to practice if you want to keep your thighs together. What you would do is you'd pivot, your thighs would start crossing, and then your foot would kick up, your knee would stay down. So you're trying to keep your knee down in both cases. And it's hard to show, well, it's impossible to show slowly because I need to relax the leg muscles in order to get the height in the front boleo. So I need to relax my, I guess my hamstring so that I can kick high. If I hold the position, my hamstring has to contract. It's no longer relaxed, and it takes up space, and I just can't bring my foot that high. So you should try, this is very interesting, to practice just sort of swinging your lower leg backward like this, and letting it relax, and just let your foot relax, and see how your leg rises, how your foot goes up. Then when you're actually dancing the front boleo, this shape will come after a pivot. So you have pivot and then swing your lower leg upward. And it's quick and it's going to relax right away. There's no lead out of the front boleo. If the leader relaxes, you relax your leg and you come back to neutral position. When I talk about the leader relaxing, what I mean is that the leader will put some energy into the lead for a front boleo. Maybe it's just the energy of interrupting your forward ocho. And then that lead will disappear, or the leader's embrace will relax, and at that point your foot should come down instantly. And part of relaxing is also turning to face the leader. So that's what I mean about coming back to neutral when the leader relaxes. Normally, the leader is going to lead the next movement right away. So you're going to go from the front boleo down and around into a backward ocho or some sort of backward walk. And there are two trajectories that I dance, which are similar, and I use them for exiting the front boleo. I go either down to the floor on the crossed side of my leg, so near my little toe, and then draw a circle around the tip of my foot and go backward. Or the other possibility is I come down already on the big toe side of my foot and go backward from there. And I'm going to try to show you those two possibilities now in a flowing way. Here's the first, and here's the second. So they look probably pretty similar, but my foot is hitting the floor in a different spot in the two, and you can really feel the floor against your foot, so you can sort of memorize this pathway or this pathway. And I want to give you those options, but I would like you not to dance something like this, where you're turning and your knee is still in the air. I'm giving you my back, but I think you can imagine that if my partner were standing here, I'd kick him or hit him with my knee, or at least he'd worry about that. And so it's vital for safety and comfort, but also it's beautiful for your leg only to go up at one particular angle and then come down right away for the spinning part when you spin out of the boleo. Let me go over that again. I pivot into my front ocho, I shape my boleo, whatever shape I'm giving it, and then it dissolves. I come down to the floor before I've spun. And again, I can come down to the floor in two places. I can come down here, which I do when I have a bit more time. Then I enjoy drawing this little circle around the tips of my toes. Or, I think particularly when I don't have much time, I come down already on this side of my foot. I hit the floor running, as it were, into a backward step. And to do that, I need to pass through a kind of a diagonal descent so that I go from up on this side of my knee to down on this side of my leg, and then finish my pivot. For years, I danced my front boleos with my legs together, and I'm not really sure, but I think I was sticking out my hip, so I was dancing the one where I bring my foot up and almost kick myself in the hip. And then something changed. Maybe people were leading more contra boleos or something, but what I love now is the type of boleo where my knee goes up, and I want to share that one with you. My knee goes up, and consequently my thighs are not touching at all. There's a big space between one leg and the other. So the shape of this boleo, and I'm hoping to convince you that this one is a really beautiful boleo, the shape of it is something like this. It's a very swishy, round, spirally movement. It starts with the turn of my hips, which is going to be awkward for the camera. Let me see. My hips turn, and then my thigh crosses across the midline of my body. Then my knee is across, but my foot still isn't. My knee comes up and around, and at the last moment, my foot sneaks around my thigh, and I've created the boleo shape. So I think it's very cool to practice this one without turning, without pivoting, and only letting your hips turn a little bit to kind of mark what will be really a bigger movement later with a partner. So you let your hips turn a little, and then your knee comes up and across. And you can check in a mirror and make sure that your knee is across on one side of your body and your foot is still on the starting side. And then once it's up and across, then you flip your foot to the other side and you keep your knee across. A lot of people, when they first try this one, their knee opens up. Don't let your knee open up as your foot goes across. Keep your knee crossed so everything is wound around you. And this one, when I dance it, I feel like it's like a big full skirt, a heavy skirt that's swirling around me. So it's like I turn and I pull this skirt, or like a heavy cape or something around me like this. You can see that my arm is kind of mimicking the gesture of my leg. It's also as if it's a kind of pure response to the leader's lead. It's more pure than keeping my knee down. And what I mean by pure is the leader's turning me, he's turning my hips. He's not leading anything like down and then up. He's just leading around. So my hips turn and my leg kind of flies out from my hip at the level of my hip. That's why I like it to be so high. And then it comes around. I guess the coming around part is a continuation of that round lead that started with my hips. So it's like my leg is pretty relaxed. I mean, I'm giving it a shape. I'm pointing my toe, but my leg is relaxed, and I'm responding to the leader's turn of my hips like my leg is a relaxed whip that after he turns me, that's like the handle of the whip, is finally arriving around the other side of my body as a response to that turn. Now, there are beautiful dancers, great dancers, who dance the boleos with their legs together, and they look gorgeous, and you should try all of them, and you'll need all of them at some point. It's a beautiful thing to dance this full skirt boleo in slow motion, and you can use it also in the dance if you have a partner who will dance slowly or who likes to walk around you in little circles, because you can swing your leg through this motion. You see, now I'm taking it a little bit farther away from my body. So instead of crossing with my ankle touching my knee, I'm a little bit farther out, and I'm just swirling through this kind of beautiful, if you let me play a little bit at the bar, this part of the motion in a kind of indulgent way. The fact that we have two such different, almost opposing shapes of front boleos, one with the knee down and the foot high, the other with the knee high and therefore the foot a little lower, gives us the opportunity to dance two different shapes in a row to mark two beats without coming out of the front boleo. What do I mean? What I mean is someone could lead me in a front boleo and give me time to dance this shape where my foot is high, and then this shape, not on purpose. This is something, I don't know if I made it up, but I find myself doing it as a sort of embellishment of the boleo. So it's something like, well, maybe I should just dance it as if with the bar. So it's like, or, I think that last one is the one I do more often, because what I'll do is I'll do my current favorite boleo, which is with the knee up, and then I'll swing into the other one. Why? Well, I just find that I have another beat to fill in the music. Not because I dance with slow leaders. It just sort of, it happens rather often with some people. Anyway, what I'm doing is I'm pretending that my leg is now, it's almost kind of stuck in this bent position, and I'm going to swing the whole bent thing backward. See, so you get this shape, and then I come out of it. And so it retains a very swingy feeling. It's like I swing around and then zoop, like kind of scooping that bent leg. And then what I showed the first time was the opposite. So if I do this one first, then I could bring my knee up for another little pop before I come out of it. There's a very useful gesture that's like a front boleo. Well, let's say it's a variation of a front boleo, very slinky and slow. It's good for slow moments in the music. So it's like this. Isn't that hot? So you go around, you do your pivot, and then it's like you start at the bottom of the elevator. You get on the elevator, you ride all the way up, you ride all the way down, and then you get off. And I dance this quite often, and I feel like it should be used more. And once you're on the elevator, really, you can play with this whole range up and down. You can mark different things in the music. I mean, sometimes there's like a high note and then another high note right afterward, and you can give two little upward swings of your foot and mark both notes. There are a few things that are smaller than boleos that are kind of like not quite boleos. Like, for example, the cut boleo. A friend of mine calls, well, yeah, a dear friend and colleague of mine calls this the cut boleo. And I'm going to dance it at the bar. So I'm doing forward ochos, and that's the cut boleo. It's nothing more than that. It's done fast, generally. And the way I know that I should do it is that the lead is fast. So if my partner is leading me to step, step, and step on the very next beat, then I don't have time to swing my leg into a full-fledged boleo, so I'll just do something snazzy, like pivot my hips and keep my feet together. That's a cut boleo. Something a little bigger, if I have a little bit more time, could be this kick. I want to give this kick a shape. I'm kicking downward toward the floor. I'm pointing my foot. I'm putting some energy into the stretch of my leg. And this kick would represent the forward motion that I was about to do that gets interrupted in every front boleo. So it's like I'm starting to go forward and I'm stopped and led backward instead. Instead of being a kind of wild, unschooled kick, like, whoa, I'm so surprised and I haven't given it a shape. Instead, I'm giving it a shape, in this case downward, to give it some style. And another option would be, if I think that it's going to be a front boleo, and then I realize I really don't have time to finish the front boleo, just something like this, where my knee goes up, but my foot stays on the same side of my standing leg instead of crossing over. So it's not a crossing motion. This one was apparently, according to my sources, very popular one summer in Paris. So even when this friend of mine would lead front boleos that he thought would come out like this, everyone in Paris was doing this. Just the same side, I don't know if you can see, but the same side of the leg, just this motion. So that was curious. But I would use that if I didn't have time to finish a full front boleo. So it could be just up and back again. It's interesting to practice them fast. So Daniel, I need your foot, because now I want to talk about stepping over a foot. So for example, if I'm here and you're asking me to step over your foot, I could embellish my stepping over with a thing that's like a backward boleo. I'm going to keep it on the floor, and it might just have part of the arc that we practiced earlier. Then as I step over, I have the opportunity for something like a front boleo. And I often choose to do a thing where I dance something like the elevator one that we practiced earlier, where my leg goes up and down because it's not really swinging around in a circle. So again, if I start out, let's do the same thing again. Thanks. So before I step over, I have this chance to do a backward boleo on the floor. And then as I step over, I have a front boleo. I could just do one and not the other. And these are boleos that I'm adding on my own. All of the other ones were led. In other words, the leader would lead a boleo, and then I would have some opportunity to stylize it in a certain way. But these I'm just adding, and they're just gestures as I step forward. The leader's asking me to step forward, and I make these fancy gestures before I step forward. There's a beautiful movement that involves a front boleo, and it also involves stepping over the leader's foot, but it's not really an embellishment. It's really indicated quite strongly by the leader, and I'm going to show you what I mean. It's a step over during a front ocho. So I'm already being led in a front ocho. Then Danny's going to stop me as I'm turning, and his foot makes the usual little obstacle course for me to step over. But because I'm turning, as he stops me, my knee already pops up. And then he brings his body closer to me. That makes me want to go over here. I don't feel like I have a lot of choice in the matter, but I think it's a beautiful thing to learn and practice so that when you're led in something like that, you're ready. Let's do it again. I'm going forward, and he's catching me in the midst of my pivot, which makes my knee want to pop up, kind of an exclamation point, like, whoa, I stopped. Then, so he's got me here. He comes closer to me, shifting his weight onto his front foot, and that makes me kind of not really shy away, but somehow reflect this direction that the dance is going, like this way. So my foot crosses and then sweeps downward, and we finish the parada. So we've spent a little time working on back boleos and front boleos and different ways to apply them in your dance. And this is just one area within the vast repertoire of the followers' expressiveness in the tango.